Now that I've watched every single season and every single episode in its era, let's talk about the OG Saban era of Power Rangers. For those of you who don't know, over the last 30 years, Power Rangers has had a couple different owners, but the first one to start it off, the first one to actually own it was Saban. This guy was a fan of tokusatsu over in Japan for a long time, and he basically wanted to bring it over in America, and he's tried a couple different times. But for whatever reason, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was the series that stuck, and ever since then they have not looked back. Now this is probably the most memorable era, just for the simple fact they do have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in there, but there is a lot of memorable callbacks in this era. First off, you have the intended series finale in Power Rangers in Space. Then you have the very slept on first spin-off, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Lost Galaxy was the first series to basically start a brand new cast. From Lost Galaxy to current day, basically each new season of Power Rangers consisted of a whole new team. It wasn't really until Samurai that the season started getting two-parters. First off with the Super name, and then when you get to Beast Morphers, it's basically just a season 2. But basically from Lost Galaxy to current day Cosmic Fury, each new series consisted of a brand new team. Whereas in the OG Zordon era, Mighty Morphin in Space, it was basically a continuation story that dated back all the way to episode 1 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was a big risk Power Rangers was taking. This is the first time they weren't going to have a basically continuous story. But it did work in their favor as each new season could tell their own story, and they didn't have to rely on the previous season to continue telling the story. And honestly, in the OG Saban era, it has two of the most slept on series, that being Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. And it has two of the greatest Power Rangers series, at least in my opinion, in Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers Time Force. Now granted, there are going to be some series that are some good contenders for best Power Rangers seasons that will come on later in the Disney era, but the OG Saban era was basically the stepping stone. You can tell in the early days they didn't really have a sense of direction, but by the time they got to In Space and essentially wanted to end the series, and then got to Lost Galaxy to where they started fresh, it looks like they did definitely find their footing and on a good spot. And at least in this era they went out on a high note with Time Force. Now Saban would go on to work with Wild Force, but during middle of production would end up sending it to Disney. And I'll cover that once I get past RPM. But this is my in-depth look at the Saban era of Power Rangers.